Thank you,
Hello,
Zachary.
friends. It's Zachary here, and we're going to cover some very interesting ground in regard to Nibiru and Nibiru-related phenomena. We'll start with this very interesting image from Siberia in northern Russia, taken a little over 2 years ago. The sun at the top, or part of the sun at the top, and Nibiru at the bottom. This is a very interesting image because, in a sense, Nibiru is caught without the usual dust cloud which usually surrounds it. And I don't know why that was or how it happened. We can see above Nibiru a bit of the cloud. In a sense, I reckon it's sort of streaming down from our perspective, and so it's not interfering with the actual some of the actual physical characteristics of Nibiru, which normally are not visible from anywhere on Earth. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We can actually skip that. We go 2 slides down. Skip that. That's overview. All right. Let me just.
Have I gone too far, Zach? Is that right?
No, you're doing fine.
Okay, there it is. Yep.
All right. There are more reports from around the world that confirm the existence of Nibiru. More reports happening in the last month since we last broadcast. Of course, you won't be hearing any of those in the media. That's a given. This is from a Zetatalk post this month. Quote, Skyfire is becoming more evident. It's seen as lightning in the upper atmosphere or burning petrol in the sky, turning to smoke or an oily sheen on clouds. In Bulgaria recently, Skyfire presented a new persona, a smoldering hunk of red dust laden petrol oil. And of course, the legacy media ignored the story because it inferred that Nibiru exists, and the legacy media wants us to believe it's just a fantasy. So we go to the next slide, please. And here we can actually see a photograph of this petrol clump. And you can actually see in both images, it's smoking a bit. It came from the tail of Nibiru, dropped in a field somewhere in Bulgaria, and was photographed. And of course, no explanation from the authorities about what it is or represents. Next slide, please. All right, this post, I'm not really sure what the source is, but it gives a really good explanation of what happened. Quite recently, a landmark event occurred which naturally did not receive widespread press coverage. It was covered at most by the local Bulgarian news, where it happened, and in some Russian media. What happened was that a smoking cloud of oil, completely covered with iron, from the tail of Nibiru, fell from the sky into the garden of an ordinary Bulgarian villager. In order to avoid burning grass on the plots, this man poured a bucket of water on this clot, after which it crumbled and turned into a red puddle. Local services took soil samples for analysis in order to clarify what it was, but the results of the research were no longer reported. I wonder why that was. A mysterious object that was bubbling with slime fell into the Bulgarian's yard. According to the owner of the site, the find smelled of metal and acid and almost set the grass on fire. And you can see once again the smoke coming up from that sample. The man poured water on the red object and it literally evaporated, leaving a rust-colored puddle. Soil samples from the crash site were sent for examination, and I'm sure those soil samples were not analyzed or acknowledged. So that's what happened in Bulgaria. Another sign that Nibiru is close to the Earth, and strange stuff is starting to drop from the sky. Next slide, please. Okay. In the United Kingdom, late in the evening after dusk, a smoldering hunk of debris was captured on film, purple due to the mix of red dusk, and that's probably red dust, or it might be red dusk actually, and the natural tint of the sky, which is blue. And this is a quote from the lady who took the photograph, which we'll see very soon. Tuesday, 15th July, approximately 10:30 p.m. I took these photos from my garden. I fell asleep on my sofa and got woken up by a noise that I can't explain. It sounded like a whoosh sound, and I felt pressure. I thought my windows were going to break. I rushed to the window and couldn't see anything. I then went to the back garden and saw this bright purple light in the sky. It was swirling around and then dispersed and disappeared. I have no idea what it was. There were no planes or helicopters. The sky was thick clouds, so no stars were visible. I live in Essex, in the United Kingdom. And the next slide will reveal the photograph. So what's going on here? The Zetatalk explanation is that the tail of Nibiru, comprised of these masses or clumps of petrol, whatever, mixed with dust, mixed with rock in some cases, actually passed in front of the sun. And that's why you get this very strange phenomena, which the lady couldn't explain. And of course, the authorities in the UK or anyone else are not eager to explain because it would indicate that Nibiru does exist and that something big is happening on planet Earth. And of course, that's the last thing in the world they want to acknowledge. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
In Saudi Arabia, a large petrol-laden blob eclipsed the sun. This is from a video available on the internet called World of Signs. And we can see the strange phenomenon, which in a sense is similar to the photo taken by the lady in Essex in the UK, although the coloring is different. In her case, it was blue and violet. In this case, it's white and pink. Next slide, please. This is the explanation from Zetatalk. The tail of Nibiru is wafting closer to the Earth and has been noted recently is bringing large debris. This is almost always a clump of petrol embedded or mixed with red dust and can appear frighteningly large when close to the Earth. In this photo from Arabia, a large blob is eclipsing the sun. Its mass is large enough to bend and distort light rays, so the symmetry of the sun is distorted. As the recent episode in Bulgaria showed, the petrol blobs evaporate quickly, and as the recent episode from the UK showed, even when the incoming blobs appear solid, they disappear. So that's what's happening according to Zetatalk. I certainly accept that explanation. And of course, we know that the authorities, the powers that be, don't want any of this to spread widely around the internet or around the world, because it would prove the existence of Nibiru, which they have continued to deny. Next slide, please. All right, there are many signs that Nibiru is nearby and preparing for a passage. These signs regularly confirm each other. Now the lightning strike map has been added to the list. Note that most of these lightning strikes across the North American continent occurred without any accompanying storms or rainfall. And you can see these three diagrams. The one on the left, there are a few here and there. The one in the center, quite a few lightning strikes, especially in central Mexico and the southeast part of the United States, the northern states into Canada, and the same thing for the one on the right. And of course, the strange thing is these lightning strikes have occurred without rainfall. But once again, it's not being reported in the media. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the Zetatalk explanation. Strong electronic screech from ripping or compressing rock can arc into the sky if the charged tail of Nibiru is wafting close by. The North American continent is under extreme duress as the New Madrid fault line is tearing open. The entire southeast portion is being pulled east, with drooping storms on either side of the fault line itself. Drooping storms are caused by the fact that the land masses actually lower in elevation, and that causes storms to manifest. And we've been seeing a lot of those, or at least the United States has been seeing a lot of those in recent weeks and months. And now lightning strikes should be added to the list of signs that the New Madrid rupture is in process. And we've talked about, or I've talked about the New Madrid fault line and the New Madrid rupture in past broadcasts and past lectures, which we have presented. Next slide, please. As further proof that signs such as the geoelectric map are valid, note that on July 17, the geoelectric map was hot, but after the large magnitude 7.4 quake in the Far East on the 20th of July, it utterly relaxed as the border of the Eurasia Plate and the mainland of North America had adjusted. And that's what we've been seeing for weeks past, months past, years past, in fact, even decades past. You get a tension built up in whatever part of the world because of these tectonic plate movements, which, as I've covered in previous lectures, are quite significant, quite massive, occurring over large stretches of land masses. And then after a particular climax or rupture or movement, we get a relaxation phase. What we've been seeing recently in recent weeks and months, that relaxation phase has been getting shorter and shorter between various incidents of tectonic plate movement. And that's to be expected as we approach the critical event, the pole shift, which is predicted by Zetatalk to be either late 2026 or early 2027. And that, my friends, is not far off in time, not far off at all. Next slide, please. Okay, on 20 July, we saw the effect of the mainland dropping or drooping, and that's the US mainland, as it is pulling the border that crosses the Far East to cause a 7.4 magnitude quake there. Okay, well, this 7.4 magnitude quake really wasn't reported in the news, not to my knowledge anyway, but there was no damage from it, or very little damage. It occurred off the tip of the string of islands in the southwest portion of Alaska called the Aleutian Islands. And there were many aftershocks. This tugging can also be seen in the intense geoelectric ripping in Canada at that time. And of course, Canada would have been affected because the northwest portion of Canada is not that far from Alaska. So this quake occurred on July 20th, 7.4 magnitude, which if it had happened on land would have caused considerable damage. But because it was in the ocean, although not far from one of the Aleutian Islands, really caused little damage and it wasn't reported in the media. Next slide, please. And here is what happened according to the heliplots, the seismic measurements that are taken in various parts of the world. We can see it registered in Beijing, the lower right heliplot, and also South Africa, which is a considerable distance away. So this thing sent parts of the earth ringing. Now, I don't know how widespread that was, whether it was actually registered here in Australia or other parts of the world. I really don't know that. But we're getting these significant quakes happening because of the tectonic plate movement, which I've been talking about for months now, which is getting more frequent and more intense as we approach the hour of the pole shift. Next slide, please. All right, you probably heard, if you follow the news at all, about the big quake that just hit in Russia. This is from a website called Inside Paper, 29 July their time, 30th of July our time, yesterday. One of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded, and the news report stated it was the number 8 on the all-time list. I don't know whether that's correct or not, but if it was number 8, that's pretty strong. It struck Russia's sparsely populated Far East Wednesday, causing tsunamis that forced millions to evacuate homes across the Pacific Rim from Japan to Ecuador. And if you follow the news reports, you would have heard about the tsunami alert that was issued in many countries, but fortunately never actually happened. The magnitude 8.8 struck off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, rattling the earth and generating waves of up to 4 meters, 12 feet in height. Those 4 meter waves were created in the middle of the ocean. They didn't really strike any land masses as far as I'm aware, fortunately. The initial quake caused limited damage and only light injuries, despite being the strongest since 2011, when 15,000 people were killed in Japan. Now, that was the quake which destroyed the nuclear facilities at Fukushima. And just a note on that, that was not a natural quake, according to several sources, and even Zetatalk eventually acknowledged it. That quake was caused by a nuclear device being detonated off the coast of Japan by the predatory elitists who were trying to extort some trillions of dollars from the Japanese government. Japanese government rightly rejected the request to turn over so much money, and so the predatory elitist sent out a ship with a nuclear device, drilled a hole in the ocean near Fukushima, put the nuclear device in it, and let it rip. So that was not a natural occurrence, according to many sources, and I certainly agree with that. Okay, back to the quake that just happened. Tsunami warnings were issued for more than a dozen countries, with millions of residents put on high alert. In Russia, a tsunami crashed at the port of Severokurilsk, submerging the local fishing plant, officials said. And you've probably seen, if you watched the news yesterday, some of the images of that. Russian state television footage showed buildings and debris swept into the sea, but it could have been a lot worse. Russia got off quite lightly, in my opinion. And once again, we have to wonder, was there divine intervention involved in the light damage done in Russia? Well, I think so, but you can make up your own mind. Next slide, please. Okay, we can see the waves that hit this small fishing village on the Kamchatka Peninsula. The bottom image is of a tsunami alert issued in Japan. And if you can make out the bottom right-hand part of that image, the eastern part of Japan, the eastern coastline, was put on alert, but fortunately no tsunamis actually hit Japan or anywhere else as far as we know. Now, the image on the right is from a website called Volcano Discovery, and you can see the huge quake, the 8.8 magnitude quake on the top. But interestingly enough, and this was not reported, interestingly enough, we had, or I should say, there was a quake not that far from the east coast of Australia or the northeast coast of New Zealand, measuring 6.6. Now that's a significant sized quake. Didn't do any damage as far as we know. It's significant, from my understanding, more for the location than for anything else, because that part where the quake hit is where the eastern edge of the Indo-Australian plate meets the western edge of the Pacific plate, and the Pacific plate is diving under, subducting under the eastern edge of our plate, the Indo-Australian. So the significance of that quake is very important, in my opinion. Fortunately, no damage was recorded. So we see, whereas, excuse me?
I was just going to say, Zachary, I think it was March last year or thereabouts, March or April, there was a 7.3 or something in exactly the same area. It's around Tonga.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because at the time they actually issued tsunami warning for the east coast of Australia, and then they cancelled it. Come out of the same place, and that is, as you say, where the two plates meet. And last year it was a 7 point something in the first It was March or April, I think.
That part of the world is pretty active because of the meeting of those two tectonic plates. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is the interpretation just hot off the press from Zetatalk. This megaquake, the 8.8 magnitude on the Kamchatka Peninsula, is a reminder to those who would survive the coming passage of Nibiru to allow for sloshing in the oceans of the world when the crustal shift occurs. Now, this is pretty serious stuff. The crustal shift will turn the globe 90 degrees, such that the current bulge of Brazil is pushed north to become the new magnetic North Pole, and India is shoved south to become the new magnetic South Pole. And I've covered this in some previous lectures. The shift occurs within a span of an hour and will not take mankind by surprise because the last weeks are detailed within Zetatalk. Jolting earthquakes occur during the crustal shift when the rapidly moving land masses stop moving and crash into each other. Sloshing occurs during the crustal shift when the water is forced over the top of the land, i.e., a tsunami. Just as aftershocks follow a large earthquake, this sloshing goes back and forth for some time, the water retreating and then invading. We, that's Zetatalk, have advised that those who would survive be 100 miles inland and 200 feet up. Tidal bore can climb high and water on the move is fierce and should be respected. All right, my friends, this is a very serious warning. I'm assuming that those who are following this broadcast live, as well as those who may be looking at the recording in coming days or weeks, you should take this seriously. Now, not everyone can be 100 miles inland or 200 feet up. I understand that. That's not the case if you're living close to a coastal area, wherever, either Australia or any other country or part of the world. I would advise serious prayer for protection for where you live, because when the pole shift occurs and the sloshing of the water follows, those who have some sort of protection, in my opinion, esoteric or otherwise, will be those who will survive. I'm not going to say any more, except to say I think all of us should take this warning quite seriously. Now we can go to the next slide, please. All right, back to the New Madrid rupture and how it affects the San Andreas fault line. The Zed has predicted that as the New Madrid rupture releases its hold along the fault line, that the mainland will slide to the southwest. That's the southwest portion of the U.S., which includes California, Oregon, Washington State, and so on. They predicted the San Andreas flip slide will get more active, and volcanoes like Mount St. Helens will erupt, and that the Hoover Dam will find its spillways jamming. Okay, you can see in the map on the left this series of mountains all the way from Shasta in Northern California, a beautiful mountain. I've had the good fortune to visit it. All the way up through Oregon and into Washington State, actually up into Canada, which is not shown on the map. In the central map, we can see the San Andreas fault line, which is well known. It's sort of running from Frisco in the north down to Los Angeles and then ending near San Diego on the Mexican border. And according to Zetatalk, as the New Madrid fault line stretches, the San Andreas fault will be activated. And of course, that only makes sense because the New Madrid fault line is a very, very large, long fault line in the US. And when that moves or activates, you're going to get some reaction from other fault lines in the US, in particular the San Andreas Fault. Next slide, please. Okay, now you may not have heard this on the news. It wasn't reported really that much from my memory. This is from CNN United States on the 11th of July. A partial tunnel collapse in Los Angeles left dozens of workers trapped about 400 feet below ground. They all survived. I think there were about 15 workers who were trapped, but fortunately they all survived. It was a partial tunnel collapse, not a complete one, thank goodness. So they got them out alive. And the story, as usual, was not reported here from memory anyway. All right, this is the Zetatalk explanation. The collapse of the Los Angeles wastewater management tunnel is an indication that the slip slide of the San Andreas Fault has begun. We predicted at the start of the Zetatalk saga in 2007 that there would be a West Coast reaction to the New Madrid adjustment. This includes earthquakes and volcanic eruptions and the failure of the Hoover Dam, as we predicted its spillways will jam. The headwaters, the Hoover Dam, by the way, is in Nevada. The headwaters of the Colorado River have now turned blood red due to the ripping rock strata there. And we can see in the small photo in the slide just how deeply red the Colorado River has now turned. And once again, of course, it's not being reported here. Probably is in America, and they're probably giving some ridiculous excuse for why that's happening. I don't know. All right, they're all signs that the New Madrid adjustment is reaching the West Coast. So things are getting serious in the United States and other parts of the world as well as we progress toward the predicted pole shift. Next slide, please. Now, this is very interesting because there are reports from Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, I believe. And this is from a website called Travel Noir on the 23rd of July. Quote, a National Park Service NPS representative have debunked videos circulating online that falsely claim animals were fleeing Yellowstone ahead of an impending supervolcano eruption. Well, sad to say, those claims are actually not false. They are quite accurate, in my opinion, anyway. But how do we know? That's not being reported here on the news. On TikTok and Instagram, videos have depicted bears, buffalo, mountain lions, and elk moving individually or in groups, allegedly from the park. I've seen some of those videos, especially involving elk, and they look quite realistic to me. Many of the videos appear to originate from Scott Whitehead. He's an American guy who identifies himself. He posted videos on Instagram, and I looked at one this morning or yesterday, and it seemed to be pretty realistic to me. Now, this month, he has shared several videos online claiming that various animals are leaving Yellowstone National Park. Separately, a TikTok video compiling multiple different videos had the following text written on it. Animals begin to leave Yellowstone 2025. Exodus in Yellowstone. Now, Travel Noir is trying to debunk this as mere conspiracy or wild fantasy or whatever. But in the next slide, we'll see that actually we've got some images of it. Now, the top image, according to Chandra, is an AI-generated image. Now, she may be right. I don't know. It's a very unusual image showing these bears piled up along the side of the road running through Yellowstone. Look like they're waiting for a truck or a van to hitchhiking or whatever. According to Chandra, that's AI. It's not true. It's not correct. Okay, well and good. But the bottom image of the elk in mass running, I've seen that video on the internet, and to me, it is true. It's not a fantasy, not a delusion. Of course, we have to consider that now is high summer in the Northern Hemisphere. And what happens in high summer in Yellowstone National Park? Well, you get thousands and 10,000s of visitors, hundreds of thousands. And if there is a warning about animals leaving, the authorities wouldn't want the average tourist to know that, would they? Mm. So it's all a conspiracy. It's all a fantasy. And we can trust the authorities and trust the government to tell us the truth. Next slide, please. This is the Zetatalk explanation. Animals communicate with each other via telepathy, as is well known. A single member of a flock or herd or pod can thus send an alarm to all. It's also common knowledge that pets will leave home if they sense a pending earthquake. The urge to flee is strong and is not resisted. Peking ducks in China are used as earthquake predictors for this reason. That said, what should be made of the current exodus of wildlife from Yellowstone? Where buffalo regularly migrate as a herd, mountain lions and bears are also leaving the bubbling calderas of Yellowstone. We have stated that Yellowstone will not return to being a supervolcano due to the baffling effect of rock layers overlapping each other over the eons. The subduction of the Pacific plates under the west coast, and that's once again tectonic plate movement, not being reported much in the media, has created baffling such that Yellowstone has been reduced to a normal volcano potential. So forget the supervolcano stuff. Yellowstone remains a possible normal volcano. As the new Madrid rupture process proceeds, Yellowstone has become restless and the wildlife thus nervous. They are perceiving the electronic streaks that compressed rock emits, wherein air pockets are eliminated so electricity can flow freely. Mother Nature looks after her children in this way. And that's a very interesting final sentence. So the animals know something big is going on, despite the denials from the National Park Service and the American government that there's anything to worry about in Yellowstone. Next slide, please. Okay, now here's the next chapter of the Nibiru cover-up campaign by the predatory elitist. And it's their salvation, in a sense. It's Comet 31 Atlas. That's what they call it anyway. Now, this is from a website called Gateway Pundit just a few days ago. Another week, another UFO-related story for us to laugh or worry about, and this is a big one. Back in October 2017, the first object from outside the solar system was discovered, the Oumuamua. And I don't know much about that, so I can't really comment much. The unusual shape, the lack of a comet tail, and the fact that it sped up as he left the gravity behind left scientists puzzled and was fertile ground for all kinds of speculative theories, with Harvard's Avi Loeb. And Avi Loeb is a quite interesting guy. He's a Harvard professor, and he does recognize the existence of extraterrestrial life and UFOs. So you can find a lot more if you Google Avi Loeb and find out his comments on various subjects over the last months and years. He suggested that it might be an alien spacecraft. Okay, we fast forward to 2015, 8 years from then, when another mysterious intergalactic object named 31 Atlas is cruising past Earth, and you will never guess what scientists are suggesting now. Yes. A controversial new scientific study alerts that 31 Atlas could potentially be a hostile alien spacecraft coming to attack our planet in November. Well, whoopee, isn't that big news? Next slide, please. Okay, this is a photograph taken from an astronomical observatory in Chile. The image taken with a small telescope on July 1st this year shows what was then known as the candidate interstellar object, etc., which has since been renamed 31 Atlas due to its confirmed interstellar nature. According to Zetatalk, that is a comet. Next slide, please. And here's the Zetatalk prediction. We predicted back in 2010, 15 years ago, that NASA would find a comet when Nibiru is scheduled to become visible, and this has occurred. Once again, Nibiru is getting more and more visible in various places around the world. We saw the oil blob or petrol blob that landed in a field in Bulgaria. We saw the photos from Saudi Arabia, the photos from the United Kingdom, that something definitely is going on. So the predatory elitist and the cover-up crowd are getting kind of nervous now because the truth is coming out in more and more places. It's not being identified as such by the authorities, of course not, but it's there for the common person to see and judge and make their own conclusion. Now, they said back in 2010, expect this version of events to emerge just ahead of the time when man can see the Planet X complex in the skies themselves daily, unassisted by a probe. So Comet 31 Atlas is ideal in that it supposedly goes behind the sun in September and thus cannot be seen until it emerges in November. Ah, how interesting. So we can follow it for the next month, month and a half, and then it disappears, goes behind the sun, comes back in November. How interesting. And once again, from the 2010 prediction, right as Comet 31 Atlas reaches perihelion, or its closest approach to the sun, actually, this would have been written recently, not back in 2010. Right as the comet reaches perihelion, or its closest approach to the sun, when it should be at its brightest and most active, the sun will pass right be in between Earth and our line of sight to the object. And what a lifeline to those wanting to deny the existence of Nibiru and promoting the Nibiru cover-up, including our good friends at NASA and just about every other agency in the United States government. Next slide, please. Thus, NASA is placing it near the sun in the view from the Earth, just where Nibiru is at present. Oh, how interesting. Nibiru is shrouded by charged red dust, which clings to the gigantic magnet Nibiru, which is thus hard to discern except by infrared scopes. Its effect is felt mainly by the daily Earth wobble, which slings to the Earth, causing plate movements and the resulting extreme weather events. And we've covered this, I've covered this many past broadcasts during the past weeks and months. The petrol and debris inbound have no other explanation than the Nibiru presence. And I certainly agree, that's the only explanation that makes any sense. But the anti-Nibiru crowd will try to force the status quo so they can remain on top of the pile. In other words, they don't want to admit the truth because they fear that they will lose control. And most important of all, humanity will realize they've been lied to for over 40 years about the existence or non-existence of Nibiru. And so the cover-up continues. Next slide, please. Now, this is a very interesting crop circle which occurred earlier this month in Wiltshire in the United Kingdom. It's a genuine circle because it's so precisely laid. The stems of the grain were bent rather than crushed. When there's a hoax circle made by humans, those stems get crushed. But when they're bent, in the case of a real circle, it means it's the real McCoy. And these crop circles are basically messages to humanity. The problem is how to interpret it. And that's not easy. Next slide.
Beautiful, aren't they?
It's lovely. Okay, this relates to Israel and the whole kerfuffle that's going on about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, because as you're probably aware, the Trump administration has recently said the Epstein files don't exist. We know they do, of course. And the speculation is that Epstein will be revealed to be a frontman or an agent of the Mossad in Israel. And of course, because Trump and Netanyahu are such good buddies, Trump doesn't want that to happen, et cetera, et cetera. It's very complex, and you probably heard something about it if you follow the news at all. Okay, per those editors, they are implying that the uproar will eclipse support for Israel, both from the left and the right. And that is, interestingly enough, what is happening. At the moment, Israel is losing a lot of support around the world because of what they're doing in Palestine. And I don't have to go over that. I'm sure you know. All right, the eclipse crop circle was reported on July 12th. It displays the pentagram used in satanic rituals. Well, it should read, it displays the inverted pentagram. And of course, if you look at the circle, you can look at it in one direction, and it's an upright pentagram, which is a holy symbol. If you turn it around and look at it from the opposite direction, 180 degrees, it's an inverted pentagram, which is satanic. I don't know where this interpretation comes from, but I'll read it. Quote, the inverted pentagram is broadly used in Satanism, sometimes with the goat's head of Baphomet. And the Church of Satan uses that, and that's Anton LaVey in America. They pair the goat head with the Hebrew letters at the 5 points of the pentagram to form the sigil of Baphomet. And this sigil was adopted for the Joy of Satan Ministries logo. Interesting phrase, Joy of Satan. Using cuneiform characters at the 5 points of the pentagram reflecting the shapes earliest used in Samaria. Okay, this goes back a long time. Samaria was a pretty ancient civilization, thousands of years old. The inverted pentagram also appears in the Satanic Temple logo, with an alternative depiction of Baphomet's head. Other depictions of the satanic goat's head resemble the inverted pentagram without its explicit outline. From around 300 to 150 before Christ, or BCE, the pentagram stood as a symbol of Jerusalem, marked by the 5 Hebrew letters Yerushalayim, spelling its name. And I checked Wikipedia to see if this was actually correct. Was the 5-pointed star used as the symbol of Jerusalem around that period of time? And according to Wikipedia, yeah, they said yes, it was. So a very, very interesting crop circle, and its meaning, of course, will be discussed and debated. Many people deny this interpretation, but to me, it has a particular ring of truth about it. Of course, you have to make up your own mind. It's a very complex matter, indeed. Okay, we're getting toward the end, and we're going to finish on a interesting note. Next slide. Zeta Talk was asked recently, the Zeta Sky computer is located in the asteroid belt, right? Answer, our sky computer permeates your entire solar system, and many repositories of the same data lie throughout for the convenience of all who use it. Our sky computer could be conceived as a hive mind, as all parts of it share and update the other parts. This is akin to a hive AI, or alternative intelligence, artificial intelligence, as our sky computer is a robot and thus not alive. Interesting, but hard to comprehend. Next slide, the last slide.
Well, it sort of reminds me of, some people would say that God is the universal mind, you know?
Yeah, well, there you go. Good interpretation. This is from 1995 when Zeta Talk first began posting on the internet. We, the service to others, Zetas, utilize a computer which communicates to ourselves and is receptive to our thoughts. This computer is tapped by others besides ourselves too, as our brethren so access it. The computer technology would not be understood by your Earth scientists, who expect computers to operate by electrical pathways, carried by metal wires or glass fibers, carried or held in various media that are inorganic. Our computers utilize organic materials. This does not make them robots nor sentient. You also use organic materials in your shoes, your belts, your shirts, your salad bowls, etc. And my final comment was, I'm not really sure I understand this. It may take me weeks or months or even years to get my head around it. And I guess I never will fully understand it unless I can get access to the Sky computer myself.